Girls' underwear. This project is challenging with a great sense of achievement when mastered. Your daughter will need plenty of underwear through her years, so the phrase "practice makes perfect" is quite fitting for this project. Pattern pieces required are the girls' underwear front and back, both cut on the fold, and the crotch, which is cut twice on the straight grain. Okay, so the underwear pattern pieces of the front and the back are both cut on the fold. So lay them out at the same time, running in the same direction, so you've got the waist at the top, running down to the next pattern piece with the waist at the top, so it's all going in the same direction, the fabric. And the underwear, you could have the front at the top. Pin it all out. I tend to pin out the underwear pattern all at once because it's such a small amount of pattern pieces, and from 1 metre of fabric you'll probably get about 10 pairs of underwear. So cut it out very precisely to all the curves, and that way you'll get your best overall outcome. Now the front pattern piece has a lovely curve for the top of the leg, and the back pattern piece has a bit of a curve down, and that goes over the bottom cheek. And cut round all of those precisely, and then you need to cut in to show the front of the crotch, the front, centre front of the crotch matching part for the front piece, and same with the back, and ready to sew. Sewing the crotch of the underwear. It looks tricky, it sounds tricky, but once you've done it once and you've got a correct outcome, you'll wonder what all the fuss was about. The first thing you're going to do is pin one of your crotch pieces to the back pattern piece, and then pin the other one to the other side of the back pattern piece. Just make sure the right side of the crotch is facing the back, so that when you turn them both together you'll have this lovely seam which is comfortable to be worn. Once you've pinned it, sew it carefully with the zigzag stitch, 3mm long, 3mm wide, and slowly do the curve of the seam. When you've finished, trim your threads. It's better to have no threads hanging around all the time than lots of threads everywhere, and then you end up cutting the wrong ones. You're going to clip this seam, so clip right up to the stitching line without cutting the stitching line. This means when you turn the two pieces of fabric to face each other, they will sit nicely, and you want to grade that seam so it's not so bulky. Now you have to find the right side of the back fabric and make sure you put the right side of the front fabric opposite. So I'm going to do it now. So the right side of the front is facing the right side of the back. And you can tell this when you look at the girls' underwear diagrams that that's how it's supposed to be. So you're going to pin one of the crotches to the front pattern piece with the right sides facing, and then just at the centre front, and then you scrunch it all up and pin the other front. So watch the video, you're rolling it up like a towel, like a napkin, roll the other one up, and here we've got the seam, we pin it together. Doesn't look like it'll work, looks crazy, but when you do pin it together and sew it and then undo it, you will see it works really well. So same again, zigzag stitch the seam, trim your threads, clip the seam, grade it. You can either choose to grade by cutting one of the crotches down a third, the other crotch down another third, and you're just reducing the bulk, or you can actually have your scissors on a 45-degree angle to make a triangulated kind of grading happen. Then we turn our underwear inside out, and voila, on both sides the hem is hidden. And press this both sides if you want. This is a nice simple part of the underwear. With the side seams and the right sides facing, pin them together. Very simple. Match your markings. Sew from the waist down to the leg. Zigzag stitch again. Take your time, there's a slight curve to the seam. And make sure you do the back stitch at the beginning and the end of your seams. Trim your threads so they're not in the way. And when you're going to press them, press the seam towards the back of the garment. Okay, waist opening. For the waist opening, we've got to measure the elastic. Read the prior page of the sewing instructions to figure out which way you're doing. I'm showing the 3/4, the tighter elastic method. You're going to measure the waist, find 3/4 of the waist by putting a pin at the centre back and centre front and the side seams, add 2 centimetres for a seam allowance and sew the elastic together. When you've done that, quarterise the elastic. That means divide the elastic into 4 and put 4 pins in it. Now the method I am using to put the elastic onto the fabric is by folding a 1 centimetre hem of the underwear material at the waist, folding it in 1 centimetre into the wrong side of the underwear when I pin on my elastic, which will be on the inside of the underwear. So on the outside you'll see the pins, and on the inside the elastic. If you're using picot elastic, which is kind of like got a scallop top, you should see that on the underwear waist top line. So attach it at the 4 quarters, stretch it in between those quarters to be able to put the other pins in. Use as many pins as possible, that way when you're taking out pins it's not too much of a handful. As I said before, stretch your elastic as you sew. Don't pull it, just stretch it, or else you may break a needle. You're going to use the running stitch, the zigzag stitch, or you can use the twin needle. Twin needle can break if you've pulled the fabric and the needle was in going down, so it may not be the best one. Just test it for yourself. The leg opening, you need to set it up with quarterising each leg opening with pins, and the elastic you need to measure 3/4 of the circumference of the leg opening, sew it together and pin it to the legs, matching all those pins. It's a smaller area, so you need to have as many pins as possible, and make sure you've stay stitched each side of the crotch so the two fabrics don't move. Remember, you're folding the fabric under 1 centimetre when you attach the elastic, and when you're sewing the only thing you're stretching is the elastic, not the fabric. Take your time going around because of the curves, especially the back leg part, and make sure you secure the seam at both ends and trim away the fabric jutting out from under the elastic.